Okay, everyone, thank you for coming today. We're going to go ahead and get started. So today's panel is going to be on startup success stories. We'll hear from 3 companies who successfully navigated launching their operations in the United States. They will share some of the challenges they found and some of the resources that made their process easier. I'm now going to let each panelist introduce themselves and their company, and a little opening comment.
Thank you for having me, everybody. I'm Mandy Sebel, and I'm the head of people for the Americas for a company called UiPath. And UiPath is in the enterprise software space in robotic process automation. So we're bringing an automation-first mentality to our customers, helping them essentially get rid of anything mundane. So we can automate just about any task that people don't want to do to elevate their human potential. Our company is born in Bucharest, Romania, and we're one of the fastest growing enterprise software companies to date. And it's my understanding that we're the first unicorn company out of Romania, which we're very proud of. And I work out of our New York City office.
Thanks to Select USA for inviting me on this panel today. My name is Weeden. I'm the Senior Advisor for Strategy and Policy at Astroscale. Astroscale's mission is to maintain the long-term sustainability of space. And I know that's a heavy statement, so I'll explain a little more. It's a technology and a space company that is developing the means with which to clean up the space debris environment after 6 decades of utilizing space. Is now congested. And there are more activities happening in space, and a lot of satellites are planning to be launched. So this is a critical time and an exciting time to be a part of the space industry. It's a $380 billion industry set to grow to $1 trillion by 2040. So there's a lot at stake here for the economy and for high-tech growth, and Astroscale is there to support that. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for coming. My name is Naor Weinstock. I'm the co-founder and chief business development of IMNA Solution. Our company headquarters actually is in Israel, and we just established our Americans headquarters in Arizona. IMNA Solution is a health IT company that is changing the face of patient engagement for clinical trials and complex chronic diseases. Today, 1 in 3 suffers from a chronic disease, which is determined as a disease that has more than one characteristic and lasts more than 2 years. We're looking at cancer, diabetes, heart failure, and neurology and other problems. The main problem is that most of the people that suffer from chronic disease actually spend only 30% of their time in the hospital and 70% of their time at home, where the physicians have no clue what's going on with them. Our system is data-driven and uses data mining to actually understand what is wrong with the patient and flag real-time alerts. We are today growing and opening our second base in the East Coast.
Thank you, everyone. So I'd like to start off the conversation with talking about how you picked a location in the U.S. And your target market. So Mandy, what do you need to think about early on when you relocate?
Yeah, so our company experienced born in Bucharest, Romania, we experienced very quick commercial success over really the past 3 years, although the company was in formation for about 10 years before that. And we followed a few things. We followed one, where the market was headed. So we actually had very early success in Japan, where automation and RPA technology was adopted very quickly from a commercial standpoint. And then, competitive trends in the market space and our customers were really pointing to the United States. And at that point, we had to evaluate whether we should really be in the Silicon Valley or in New York City. And while I wasn't there at the time, there was a competitive organization that had rooted itself on the West Coast. And so many enterprise software companies in the financial markets are in New York. And so the decision came to point towards New York City, which has worked out incredibly well for us. So I joined the company in October of 28. The company migrated its official corporate headquarters in the States to New York in 2017. And we are just about 1,000 people in the Americas right now. And so I think rooting ourselves into New York City was really pinnacle for that. We had a lot of access very quickly to a lot of our customers, a lot of talent, a lot of tech talent, and our investors. It really opened a lot of doors.
That's great. So Charity, so you've also had experience establishing a company in the U.S. So what took Astroscale by surprise when deciding to establish in the U.S.?
Yeah, a little backstory. Astroscale was founded in 2013 by a Japanese national, Nobuo Okada, well known, and opened an office in Singapore, opened a larger office in Japan, for which that was the headquarters, to build and design a satellite that would go up and attach to other satellites to bring them down if there's space junk. The next step was to open an office in the UK. There was a lot of incentive to do that, both policy incentive and there's an innovation effort in the UK to bring in space companies. But we realized that the largest market is the US, and the largest influencer of the regulations and the policy of how we deal with space debris was also in the US. I started supporting Astroscale last year as a consultant and helped them through the policy and the regulatory process. But now we opened an actual office in Denver, Colorado, because it was time to connect with the supply chain, the talent in the US, and also be closer to some customers that we want to work with here in the US as well. So those were really important items for the growth of Astroscale and why we chose the US, and particularly for Denver was great talent pool, lifestyle, cost of living, et cetera, direct flights from Tokyo and London, so kind of fit the company's geographic diversity. But also that supply chain was important, and Colorado had a very strong aerospace industry. What took us by surprise, there was pleasant surprises, I have to say. One was the amount of access we had to the government, the Department of Commerce. First off, we went to the Office of Space Commerce and asked, who should we talk to, et cetera. And they were very open, even though they're a brand new office, and there was a lot of interest in talking to them. And they directed us to Select USA, for which we had several conversations with on kind of comparing locations and helping us through that information that we needed. And also, so really the support of the federal government there, but then drilling down into the state level support, the economic development agencies that were very, very much open to talking with us as well. So a very pleasant surprise, the accessibility of government to lure Astroscale to the US. And a surprise that is a challenge was as I said, we're in a very a space renaissance, as they say, and there's a lot of regulatory reform going on right now in the US. And as we entered the US market, there was a lot of rulemakings going on with regards to the space industry. So we started quickly and hopefully strongly in being involved in the regulatory comment opportunities as well. There was Commerce, and there was State Department, and there was FCC. It has kept us very busy these first couple months of starting up in the US. So I think the timing was also
serendipitous
as we were coming into the US.
Great. So May, what were the challenges a self-funded startup like yourself faces when choosing a target market?
So when you're a self-funded startup, you have basically a very limited amount of money. I think that's something that most startups can actually feel this, you feel the pressure. So when you choose a place, you actually have to look at your partnerships. What are the partnerships that you can establish within that space? Because you have a limited runway, and that runway needs to be both quick, efficient, and you have to make sure that the partners that you choose are not necessarily the big companies that have the big name, but the partners are the ones that can help you show that your product is valuable to the market. So when you go into a partnership, or when you go into a POC, a proof of concept, when you do it, you look at the state and you look at the space that you're trying to go into. We're looking at healthcare, and healthcare, everybody knows that Massachusetts is a really good place for healthcare. We're trying to find a place that wasn't as competitive, but had enough partners that we can approach. So we found Arizona to be our home. They have TGen and Mayo Clinic and Honor Health and Dignity Health, and they have a lot of hospitals and research facilities that were keen to help us with a soft landing. And what we did is we built an action plan with them. So we looked at them literally as partners, not as, okay, let's prove that our product is working and then we're each going to go our separate way. And that was crucial for our growth in Arizona. And I think that when you're self-funded and you don't have somebody who has your back, every penny counts and every mistake is a painful one. And we made a few, as we always do, everybody does, and you have to learn from your mistakes. And I think our crucial mistake was trying to go for the big companies first. And then we realized that the selling process is longer, and we realized that bureaucracy or the red tape is a determining factor of how fast they're going to sign the partnership. So we went back to the drawing table and we decided that we're going to go to medium-sized companies. And Arizona, again, was the state that had the most for us, the most medium-sized companies that were looking to expand with international companies.
Great. So I'd like to switch topics here and talk about talent and building your teams. So Mandy, what are the key hires you need to make for your team?
Yeah, so I've consulted to some other fast-growing startups prior to joining UiPath, and I think one of the things that was very attractive about joining the company is a reflection of what they did really well from a talent perspective early on. So we already had a base of talent in Romania, where the company was born from, and our culture was very clear. And when you have a company that has purpose and has a very clear culture and set of values that you not only espouse but are true, and you make your hires really aligned to that value system, it really propels the company, and I think UiPath did that really well. So one of the, couple of the first key hires in the company in the States, and our CEO spent a lot of time in the United States making these key hires happen, which I think is another really important talent strategy. Your founder, your CEO, your initial leadership team, whoever that may be, if you're not spending, over 50% of your time, hiring, you're probably making some early mistakes, letting go of the culture too early, and that's something that you really don't want to have happen. So a couple of the key roles that we made very early on were essentially members of our leadership team. So we hired our chief marketing officer into the United States, and building our brand, really quickly taking advantage of the market opportunity by telling people who we were, telling telling our story, getting our story out globally was really important for us, and that was a very big land for us, and I think it paved the way for quite a bit of our growth very quickly. Second, we hired a regional chief revenue officer, like a head of Americas, who knew the market, knew the customers, was able to build relationships with our other entities, bring over the right talent from Romania or any of our other global locations. And those two people, in addition to really growing the customer base, were really responsible for making all of the early key hires. So if I think about it, I came in, like I said, in October of 2018. I'm probably around the 500th person that they hired into the United States. But I spent most of my interview process with those two individuals and the CEO. And that's how critical talent was to this organization. Now, I think in addition to that, there was really early investment in a recruiting engine. So, whether you're a small company starting out and you just bring, one or two people in-house to do your recruiting for you, it's really, really key to have internal recruiting resources who know how to go at the market, build your employer brand, bring the right talent into the organization early on. That's really important. And if you're working with other third parties to help you do that, that they can help control those organizations to support your success and find you the right talent. I think that has been really tremendous for this company, but it's also a successful formula for other companies that I've seen versus companies that have been less successful in their early startup mode. And then you can really start to build the processes and the interview processes that carry that further, because obviously you have to let that permeate, or it'll take you too long. And we grew really rapidly, so you have to get it right at the beginning, and then you have to build the systems to allow for it. But those were some of the key hires. And then probably selfishly, I would say this: I think it really does help to have people in markets that do know the HR and legal landscape, whether it's third-party partners when it comes to maybe the legalities, or some sort of early stage relationship that helps you do that. It's very hard to install benefits or programs or payroll later on when you're larger. It's really very helpful to have some of those foundational elements early, and there's a lot of ways to do that, either with your own in-house resources or third-party ecosystems that help you to get that right. But it's difficult looking back to fix things versus give a really foundationally great employee experience from the beginning, and I think those are the things that we did well.
Great, thank you. May, can you speak to building the right team on a limited budget?
Yes. So when you're looking at a limited budget, in a big company, when you have a few people occupying like the marketing department, if one of them makes a mistake, there's 3 or 4 to catch that mistake. When you do it in a startup, when you have one person who is applying themselves to several positions, and they do the social media, and they do the context and everything. If they make a mistake, it's a painful mistake. So each person really counts. And when I'm looking at our team, we handpicked each and every one of them. It was very important for us, the founders, to sit down and talk to them and make sure that they understand our crazy head. I mean, you have to be crazy to start a startup. It's not something that, if it was easy, everybody would have done that. But for us, it was really important to make sure that those people understand what we're trying to achieve. Our company has a mission that, the founding team, which is the CTO, the CEO, and myself, all have a personal story that actually propelled the startup. So it was important for us that they, A, know what we are trying to achieve, and B, think outside of the box and bring themselves into the game. So one of the key elements for us for choosing those people was to give them kind of like a test. It has no answer to it. It's just to see how they think. It's just to see if they would come to us and say, we think there's a different way of doing things. those are people that you want to have really close to you. The stronger the people that are with you, the stronger you are. So those are the people that you have to look for, especially if you know that you can hire only 3. So if you can hire only 3, you better hire the ones that are going to tell you that you're making a mistake, and not the ones that are going to agree with you about everything.
Great. So Charity, I know Astroscale is set up to attract STEM talent. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. The space industry, I feel, is unique in that it's small. We tend to know each other. And so very competitive for talent as well, especially aerospace talent, the engineers, et cetera. And so, but it's also critical. We are a space company, and we're building space technology. So you absolutely must have that talent stream. And so aligning ourselves with local universities and being outgoing and engaging in the community is incredibly important. Aster Scale is also, we realize the importance of being among the like-minded industries. So the space industry, for example, if there's trade associations, if there are business roundtables, just getting to know and networking with our community, you can usually get some good leads of who's looking for new work and the like. I think Astroscale is also in a unique position because of that vision and the message that we're bringing of space sustainability, that it's an environmental issue. And I feel that the younger graduates can connect with that very well. And so there's a bit of a draw to that sort of vision and mission as well that supports Astroscale's hiring needs. So STEM education is important. Universities supporting that and having those engagements and links with them. Putting that aside, there's also, it's not just the commercial community we want to work with. We also hope to have the government as a customer. So having talent that knows how to work with and through the government is incredibly important as well.
Thank you. So Mandy, UiPath scaled rapidly. So looking back, what were the challenges and benefits of scaling so rapidly?
So we grew to be about 3,000 people in less than 3 years. So if you want to take that in for a minute, I was having dinner with our chief people officer who hired me, and he told me about 2 months in that, just a reminder that at the end of 2017, the company was about 70 people, and I was joining at about 500-600 people, and in the Americas, and that we will almost be about 3,000 people right now. So I think the benefit is, I think every person in our organization, literally globally, feels that they are a part of an incredibly special ride. Okay, we all feel like we're building something. It happened really quickly, so even employee 3,000 feels like they're part of a startup. And we're all very connected to our values. We all communicate. We're an incredibly communicative company for such a global company that grew so quickly. I think everybody feels incredibly connected to the success of the company, and then just to build on what you were saying about STEM talent or the competitiveness for talent, I think we all globally know how difficult it is to compete for engineering talent, sales talent, women who can be future leaders, diversity and inclusion. All these topics are just so top of mind right now, but you feel it. You feel that hiring first mentality from every single person in the company, and I think that's maybe not unique to us, but it is unique to have that feeling and have everyone so committed to bringing absolutely top talent into the organization. I've never. I lead part of our recruiting team, and you never have trouble getting somebody to interview. You never have trouble getting people to refer people. You never have trouble getting people's time to talk about the talent agenda of the organization, which is really special. So those are some of the things that I think are incredible about our growth and our success, and that we are now really, almost like turning the page on, like how do you make sure you don't lose that? How do you put in the rest of the ecosystem from a human capital standpoint or talent strategy standpoint so that you can make the quality and caliber of hire at number 3002 as critical and important and as capable as employee one, because you want that feeling, and your customers want that, right? They don't want to feel shortchanged because they got somebody later on. So keeping the caliber really high is difficult and challenging. Keeping the the message in the community about who we are globally, who we are, what we do, creating unique experiences for our employees, really important. Creating a path for diversity and inclusion, whatever that means globally, really important to us. Going at early career talent now to solve for the problems later on in career for people. It's hard to hire enterprise software sales leaders who are women today because people weren't focused on it 20, 30 years ago. And we want to make sure that we're solving for that early because we have the opportunity as a young company to make those choices for ourselves now. So I think we have some of those challenges ahead of us. Certainly when you hire that quickly, you make some mistakes. And when your culture is that important, and when your customers, really demand so much of you as well, and your teams demand so much of you, I think it's equally as important to identify when you've made a mistake, talent-wise or culturally, and move quickly past that for the organization, so that you don't disenfranchise other people who are working really hard. And I think those are some of the natural talent cycles that we're facing.
Great, thank you. So each of you have kind of mentioned some partnerships or resources that have helped you grow and become a startup success story. So May, I'd like to ask you, how did you find the right partnerships to excel your growth, and what resources did they provide you?
Market research. I think one of the crucial thing is market research. When it goes back to choosing where you're gonna put your company. So when you do that market research, you have to look at what resources they have. When we looked at Arizona, we wanted to know if they have an IT emphasis, if they have healthcare emphasis, if they have special groups or networking that can facilitate that. The first thing that we did is actually we had our CEO, Israel Heiken, fly there and look at the ecosystem. And once we looked at the ecosystem, you look at the groups that are there. So, for instance, in Arizona, and I know that other states have it as well, but in Arizona, the governor has set to put healthcare in the front, and because of that, there's the Great Phoenix Economic Council, there's the Commerce Committee as well. Since we're from Israel, there's the Israel Technology Alliance, but I know that they have the same alliance with Japan, and they have the same alliance with the UK. So look for those alliances and look for those people. Once you find them, make sure that you know what it is that you want. Don't just go there and say, okay, I'm looking for a company. Be very specific of how they can help you. So whether it's with financials or whether it's partnerships or workforce, they know the space. They've been there. They work there. They know the people. But make sure that you have the right questions. So our target was to find educational partner. So we're looking for a university. They in return said, okay, you know what? There's two universities. One is one is looking at research. So they connected us with ASU, Arizona State University. They have the connections. It makes the time to market much shorter. So you have to know the right people. It's better than sending a cold email and then waiting for a response.
Great, thank you. So Charity, how is Astroscale approaching partnerships with other U.S. companies?
Yeah, partnerships are critical. We're not just talking a small widget here, we're talking about space. And so it's not just one company that goes up and cleans up space and makes it sustainable for everyone in the future. It's going to require an international effort. It's going to require a government effort, an industry effort. And so we're engaged on all those levels, from the United Nations to World Economic Forum to how we're contributing to trade associations here in the U.S. as well, building best practices and devising, how responsible operators should be in space instead of leaving their space junk up there, bring it down, et cetera. But when you get down to the business partnerships, those are key because not everyone has, the specific technologies across the board for the space environment. So you strategically select partners that can support and help build each other's business. Also, partners that know how to work with the government, because let's face it, space technology is dual use. It has a military side and a commercial side. We're on the commercial side, but if we're going to work with the government, we also need partners that can help through that as well.
Great. So I'd like each of you to kind of share some closing remarks on advice for starting a company in the US or launching your operations there, or any just final remarks, and then I'll open it up to the audience for some Q&A. So Mandy, would you like to start?
Sure, thank you. I guess the final remark is, it's really never too early to think about the talent that you're bringing in, and to make sure that your vision, your mission, your values, as trite as that might sound, are incredibly clear, really well understood, and that you never lose sight of connecting your teams to that, because your customers feel it. And anything that you can do early on as you establish your footprint in a new ecosystem to take advantage early of the partnerships, the available marketplace opportunities, your investors, to help you get at the right talent early. I think it really makes the difference between successful companies and unsuccessful companies in my own experience. Anyway, so it's been terrific to be a part of UiPath. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
So it boils down to one word: engage. For small startups, you may be tempted to just, get a small office and head down and get the work done. You have to get out there and engage with government, engage with industry, engage with academia. I think that's where you can find interesting resources and human resources and talent that way as well, and get the word out about your company and its mission and its vision as well. So I would say engage as much as you possibly can.
Basically, they said everything, but it's all about relationships. It's all about relationships. It's how you maintain them, and as startups, we sometimes have the tendency of finding somebody, and then for some reason, they're not a perfect fit. But just be courteous. Make sure that even though that person or that company is not a fit for yours, maintain those relationships, because sometimes you start at one point in your path, and then you grow and you change, and when you change, you need different people, and you have your company and your the people in the company have different needs, and all of a sudden you remember that one person that you decided that they had no use. So just maintain those relationships and make sure that it's not once in a lifetime phone call.
And as I was reflecting on what each of you were saying, you guys each mentioned ecosystems. So I'd like to ask to the group, so feel free to answer as you see fit, but what is crucial in an ecosystem, and what you think some ecosystems are missing that they could improve upon to support companies trying to operate in the US?
I'll let you start over there.
I think that a good ecosystem is an ecosystem that supports each other regardless of the competition. Mm-hmm. So if you work in a space of healthcare, I think that the more people work together, the better off we'll be. I can say from my experience, healthcare does not belong to the government. It doesn't belong to the IT companies. It belongs to us. So we have to remember that, right now I'm sitting here as a startup, but then, down the road, I'll be somewhere and I'll be the patient. And we have to remember that an ecosystem is something that, you support, they support you and you support them. So find that networking, find that, and don't be afraid to be that first one that actually recommends somebody else to do a job that was turned to you. That's fine. If you can't provide that, somebody else can, and that's okay, because, time will come and they'll do the same, hopefully.
Well, I'll just mention in the space business, ecosystem can get large as well. But knowing that we use satellites every day, you're using satellites right now, and knowing that it's critical to our modern society, it brings a connection for what we do. It might be very technical, in a clean room, et cetera, but really it's for the public. It's for you to have access to GPS information and communications and remote sensing and your Google Maps, et cetera. And so I think our ecosystem, it's really the entire global society and the public. When it comes to culture and that ecosystem in the company itself, it's maintaining that vision and having those that are in part of the company and the culture understand the vision and allowing differing opinions, diversity to shine through and help the company grow.
So who here in the room does something that they wish they could automate? Everyone, right? Yeah. So for us as a company, each and every one of you are a part of our ecosystem. We are really trying to unlock human potential. That's essentially what our automation, our technology does. And so whether it's all of you who have a curiosity and will go and look at our technology that's free and available and learn how to use it, and that curiosity that you have, whether it's the communities or the academic alliances that we're a part of, our customers, our partners, our former customers, the candidates that we hire or don't. I think those are all our investors, the influencers that surround us are all a part of that. And then, something that I think is equally important is that particularly as, those of us who are in leadership roles are the other people in the world that we get our coaching and leadership from, who are not necessarily in our companies, that give us unique perspective. So I think that word is, can mean many things. But I think the point being that there's just so many different channels and avenues that early stage companies and later stage companies need to take advantage of. Humility, to be humble, is part of our value system. And what that really means for us is around really not having an ego, constantly being open to feedback and learning and hearing from others. And just by nature of that, having that open-mindedness, I think that even opens up who's in your ecosystem wider.
Great. Well, thank you all very much. Now I'd like to open it up for Q&A for the audience. So if anyone... There's mics in the back. Anyone?
Thank you. Just you mentioned there about bringing in expertise on the HR side, because presumably outsourcing some of the legal aspects. Just how did you identify where you could get somebody that would really work, or a company that would really work very well with your company?
Yeah, so I think at different stages of a company, you might take different approaches. So as an example, in a market that you're emerging into, could be the United States. There's a lot of third-party providers they call a PEO that help you get the infrastructure stood up to buy you some time before you need to bring some of that in-house expertise into the door. But outside of that, I think whether you're ready for somebody as large as a chief HR officer, or you just need, an early stage generalist, or a recruiter, or some combination of the both. It probably depends a little bit about what you're trying to do, how fast you're trying to grow, and what type of complexity you have. But it's people or a couple of people who are savvy enough to know some of the legal challenges you might face, who give you the right foundational support, or who know how to work the networks, whether it's with your employment council, your benefit providers, depending on what your system is. And I often, when I've been consulting to earlier stage companies, we'll even rely on people like those folks I just mentioned, their benefit provider, their employment council, to help them interview for that candidate, so that you're getting the right mix, right? It's the cultural ambassador that helps you, sort of attract the right talent to the organization, but also has the sophistication to know how to, sort of protect you as you grow.
All right. Quick question to all three of you. I mean, you are non-US companies and you went to the US without having an employer brand or anything. How do you compete for young or good talent or the best talent with other companies without having actually an employer brand at the beginning?
So from Astroscale's perspective, I believe the company was well known in the US before we opened an office here, as one of the very few companies in the world looking at this problem. And so we made our name well known because of that, and engaging early, before you even had an office here, engaging with the government and the industry. And so it was a natural progression to move an office here. And like I said before, the mission also attracts the talent, but also the location of where you do set up shop will also support the talent growth.
For us, since our research and development is in Israel, and here in the States we have the marketing and sales team, what we did is we went to universities in Arizona, and we looked for young talent, because we were looking for somebody who's going to grow with us. We went to a few of those job fairs, and we participated in them. We gave a background of our company, and we invited them to join us for kind of like a tag along for a week. So they were able to see our culture. They were able to meet our team from Israel through video conferencing. And then we chose from there.
Now, I would say probably a little bit similarly. So for us, I remember hearing about the company when it raised its Series B, and it was less than 50 people in the United States. It was early 2018. I had read about it in TechCrunch, but the name wasn't familiar to me. I was sort of surprised to see such a successful raise in New York City for a technology company, because that's not as common, but I've been keeping an eye for it. And, the savvy researcher, on this side of the consumer as a potential candidate, does their research, right? So it's really important, no matter where you're located, for people to have, be accessible, on LinkedIn. Everyone uses LinkedIn. Those ecosystems we talked about, whoever's investing in you, that you leverage their networks, that you use really your early top talent to be available in that interview process and sell your story. I actually think in some ways it's easy when you're early, if you have an exciting product and technology or whatever it is that you're bringing to market, if that early group of people and that story is incredibly compelling, because not everybody wants to work at Google, right? In fact, many people want to leave those organizations to have an impact, but you have to be able to differentiate why your impact is different from their impact and my impact. And that comes to life, I think, with the right people telling that story. Probably the second thing I would say is it is about some of those really early key hires that you will probably get help to make. So as an example for us, when we have tremendous engineering talent in Romania, and our brand is well known in Romania, but here, when we wanted to drop ourselves into the middle of Seattle and Bellevue, surrounded by all the top dogs, we made a couple of incredible hires who have a real heat centers for AI and machine learning, and they are really, really important to our talent brand. I personally feel very lucky. We've invested a lot in our employment brand, but that doesn't come, day one. That comes with time. And there's a sophistication to that as well. So whether you're on the bandwagon of your marketing and your general brand, or you have the time and investment to go right out to your employer brand, I'd say really key early hires that are attractors of talent, not just from their own networks, but know how to do it is really important.
Yeah, I have a question regarding fundraising and capital. So the U.S. tends to have good valuations for companies that have intellectual property or growing startups and attracts a lot of talent and money. Have you found the U.S. to be a hospitable place for capital raising, fundraising, capital markets, and have you availed yourself of it?
Astroscale has raised $133 million, most if not all of it from Japan. So we're well capitalized now to move on to the demonstration mission for next year. So we're not in a position to reach out to the U.S. capital markets yet.
IMNA has bootstrapped, which means that we brought money from home until now. We're just now starting the first series. It really depends on where you are in the road. If you're looking for angel money, if you're looking for seed money, you have to make sure that when you're looking at raising money, that you don't just turn to any investor or any angel or any VC. Make sure that you look at their portfolio and they're actually in your space. Otherwise, they're not going to take the time and date to even answer. You have to make sure that you have something that shows traction. Otherwise, especially in the United States, the competition is fierce. It's not easy to raise money here or anywhere else. So you have to make sure that your financial deck is very accurate, but easy to understand. Don't have too many numbers. Don't have too many figures. Tell a story. Tell a compelling story that is a portrayal of your brand, and make sure that you're looking at the right investors. VC is not necessarily the correct investor if you're looking to raise $500,000. On the other hand, you will not go to an angel if you're looking for $6 million. So you have to make sure that you know how much money you need and don't raise more than what you need. Because, a lot of startups will go and say, we're raising $20 million, but they need only 10. So don't raise more than you need, because you will need that money down the road. But when you need it again, then you'll be in a stronger place. You'll have customers, you'll have traction, you have the talent that you now have money to hire, and then your valuation will be different. So you'll be talking to a completely different crowd of investors.
Next question.
So these are 3 wonderful success stories, but a success story never is that linear. So what was, for example, a pitfall you stepped in, or a fuck up? Something what you really say, well, that happened, that was a big mistake, and because I guess we can learn maybe a lot also from a mistake if you could be that transparent.
For us, we started with one product that we were sure that the market has a need for it. And then we realized that it had the need only for half of what we were offering. So we had to go back and make sure that we're not in love with what we were offering, but we knew the space, we knew what we wanted to achieve. We weren't accurate at what we were developing. So we changed it. We just kept the core technology, but we changed the platform. Today, it's a really good thing. We have a market for what we're doing. But at that time, it took us 3 months that we didn't have, and we had to hire different people because we weren't looking at data analysis only, we're looking at machine learning, and we needed data scientists. That's a completely different avenue. So we had to spend more money on hiring, and we had to spend more money on the system infrastructure and the architecture, and that took us back about 6 months.
Any questions? Okay, well, that's it. Well, thank you everyone for coming. And give a round of applause to our panelists for doing such a great job.